What you're going to see next will top Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. I'll guarantee it. The skies are full of X-Men this week on Sci-Fi Buzz. The 20-year-old super institution is now an animated series for Fox. Also flying high this week are the Battlestar Galactica creations of the Grand Master of Movie Special Effects, John Dykstra. The larger-than-life fantasy role players from Knights and Warriors. And we'll remember the late gimmick king, William Castle.
I'm William Castle, and I feel obligated to warn you about the next attraction you will see at this theater.
Hi, I'm Mike Jarek, and the staff here at Sci-Fi Buzz has been following your leads all week. And if my guess is correct, we will have a fascinating half hour in the area of science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Of course, if my guess is wrong, this entire staff over here will be fired. It's just a joke. How can we miss on our very first story? It's about the #1 comic book in America. Nope, not Superman, not Batman, but the X-Men. It's your everyday story of a bunch of misfits who just happen to be superheroes. Now, the X-Men have been around for almost 20 years now, and now they have their own television show.
We got trouble. Run, girl, run!
Target identified. Initiate capture.
Target? Capture?
The X-Men may always be there to protect us, but who will be there to protect the X-Men from the Hollywood mill that seems to only be able to create hits from the X-Men's real rivals over at DC Comics?
How can you say they're more successful? They've had Batman, they've had Superman, we had Howard the Duck.
After 30 years of turning the rights to Marvel characters over to uncaring hands, editor and pop icon Stan Lee has come to Hollywood to get his hands dirty.
We figure we can ruin these things as well as some stranger can.
And while Stan leaves the straight lines to colleagues like X-Men series producer Winston Richard,
we ended up with story editors, writers, artists, all manner of creative people that were just the greatest. I mean, it was
luckily
a
half of them were mutants, so they were able to really get into the spirit of it. And
Stan Lee speaks in comic book balloons about the creation of a unique band of heroes.
As you can imagine, when you do superhero stories, every time you come up with a new superhero, you have to figure out a way that he got his superpower. Well, how many times can you have somebody bitten by a radioactive spider or born on a planet Krypton? I mean, after a while, you run out of ideas. So it occurred to me, by saying that these people are mutants, which means they were just born with a certain power, they mutated the way vegetables do or anything else, you don't have to explain things. You can come up with any idea you want, and you can say, oh, well, he's a mutant. Oh, I see, that's how it happened. Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Here's one from a pro.
As X-Men series executive producer, Stan Lee promises characters as complex as the comic book.
If you could imagine the characters in fried green tomatoes with superhero powers.
Including the most popular X-Man, Wolverine.
He's the shortest of the group, I guess, but he's a real scrappy fighter, and he has these claws that can come out of his hands, which become great weapons.
So we get him, and we shred him.
And Stan says that this time, Hollywood is understanding his approach to superhero fantasy.
They're sort of outcasts, they're underdogs, and yet they're incredibly powerful and interesting characters.
We learn how to control our mutant powers for the benefit of mankind.
So have heart, Marvel fans. The X-Men have a powerful ally in their battle against the mediocrity of Saturday morning TV. Their own executive producer, Stan the Man Lee.
I can't wait. I think it's going to be great.
This game is over.
Well, now that X-Men has been launched as a successful television series, Stan is turning his attentions to his most famous creation. Terminator and Aliens director James Cameron is in discussions to direct a film about Peter Parker, a photographer who moonlights as your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. After this short disconnect, the Buzz will be back with Cylons, Knights, and Warriors, and a very nice man who made some very creepy movies, William Castle. I can't believe it's been 15 years since Star Wars burst onto the scene, catapulting movie special effects to a brand new level. John Dykstra was the guy that Gary Kurtz and George Lucas called upon to stage those dogfights in space. Now, doing those on a movie budget is one thing, but recreating that excitement for TV is another.
Firepower to destroy the entire fleet.
Special effects is considered a black box by most producers. They look at it and they go, oh, we don't want to do that. It's way too expensive. But special effects, for the most part, is more precisely plotted, planned, and laid out than any live-action walking, talking segment ever was.
John Dykstra was the man executive producer Glenn Larson stole away from George Lucas to produce one of television's most ambitious sci-fi projects, Battlestar Galactica. The stakes were high, even by today's standards, but $1 million an episode television series in 1978 was unheard of. Dykstra's background as supervisor of special effects on Star Wars and earlier as Douglas Trumbull's protege on 2001 and Silent Running taught him that careful planning was money that stayed in the bank.
We start out with storyboards that are interpretations of the written word. We work with the director of photography, and the editor, in many cases, to determine exactly what elements are necessary to tell the story in a given effect sequence, because the effects, because they're made of multiple elements of film, are very expensive, and you don't want to cut a piece out of the film because you throw away a lot of money when you throw away an effects shot.
There was certainly no money to throw away on Battlestar Galactica. The bridge set alone was rumored to cost $1.5 million. The soldiers' uniforms were designed by Jean-Pierre Dorlac, a world-famous fashion designer. The soundtrack was recorded by the Los Angeles Philharmonic. Special effects were absolutely state-of-the-art, but with a cost-cutting feature.
From inception, the scenes themselves were designed to be modular, so we could take 3 of these ships and put them in camera right-hand side and 3 of the enemy ships in camera left and create this thing. Or we could take those 3 ships and combine them with the battlestar and have a slow-moving shot, so that we did an awful lot of moving things around.
Other changes for television included bigger stars for backgrounds that would be seen easier on TV, and ships that moved slower, even at their fastest, so they wouldn't end up as streaks on a 10-inch screen. One scene that John considered bigger, faster, and more elaborate than his film work to date, the Cylon destruction of the Caprica Presidium.
Oh my God! It's a tremendous explosion!
We went down to Long Beach and shot at their City Hall, which was Long Beach, my hometown. And we had all of this equipment out there. We had charges. We were setting off out in the center of the quad. We had Jane Seymour. We had all of these people. It was like this giant deal. And I remember, I've worked on lots of big films. This was like one of the biggest setups that I'd ever seen. It was huge.
The Cylons never did completely wipe out the survivors of the colonies aboard the Battlestar Galactica. That job was left for the ABC network. And while the show will probably never be remembered for breaking new ground in the areas of great writing or acting, it will be remembered as the show that set a new standard for special effects on television.
Hi, I'm Randy Hudson from Reno, Nevada, and I'd like to recommend The Methuselah Factor, published by Rattlesnake Publishers. It has 2 strong heroines in it, and it is a time travel adventure. It's a great story.
Geraldine is wearing a silk-lined, slate-gray evening coat over a sleek, burnished silver silk evening gown.
Wake up out there. This is the 90s. Computers are no longer immobile masses of monitors, keyboards, and cables that you hunch over in tiny cubicles. Those on the cutting edge know that today, computers are also for people on the move. That's right. They're practically fashion accessories.
Geraldine, ladies and gentlemen, with the world's first wearable pen PC.
Last May, Grid Systems Corporation unveiled a new computer called PalmPad at this fashion show. The event emphasized a new trend in computer technology. Portable, pen-based computers are now being designed for the mobile workforce. That is, the 20% of U.S. workers who spend most of the day on their feet away from a desk. These rugged electronic clipboards enable the user to file reports and enter information into a home office computer instantaneously. That means no more lost or tattered documents. And more importantly, a lot less paperwork to process back at headquarters.
What do you think?
That's very impressive.
Meanwhile, the techno wizards at Apple Computer have developed a new hardware and software technology dubbed Newton Intelligence. This new technology will result in several new products, including a very portable personal digital assistant. Newton is designed to take the place of those highly prized personal organizers the upwardly mobile can't seem to function or leave home without.
The first Newton product is about the stuff that you do every day. Taking notes, capturing ideas, managing the people in your life and the places you have to be at what time. And it's really easy to use. It's not like you have to do anything different. It's the stuff you've been doing all the time in one place.
Newton serves as a Rolodex, date book, sketch pad, calculator, and personal secretary all rolled into one. Like a real live secretary, Newton becomes more understanding of the user's style and methods of doing things over time, becoming more and more personal.
Someday, you'll be able to say, call Bob and tell him I can't make it to the party on Saturday, and it would look up who Bob is and realize that that's, you know, the president of some other company and send a nice formal thing to him, whereas it's just your friend. It'll just say, you know, yo, Bob, I'm not going to make it. Yeah.
But unlike a real assistant, Newton is at the user's beck and call anytime, anywhere. So goodbye paper, goodbye pen, goodbye purse. Today, the only thing a guy or gal on the go needs to do is grab their computer, whether it be strap-on or clutch, and hit the streets. But what is the future of this miniature technology? If it gets any smaller, we won't be able to find it. I'm serious. If this computer gets smaller, you'll have to attach one of those beeping keychains so you don't lose it. I mean, I lose everything. I can just imagine me someday looking through my sock drawer, trying to find my fax machine. Actually, I think it's time to take a break here on Sci-Fi Buzz, but I can't be sure because, well, I used to have this digital watch. It was the size of a penny. I think I spent it on gum. When we come back, the fantasy role players of the Knights and Warriors. Don't touch that remote control. For science fiction fans, fantasy role-playing is certainly nothing new. Now, some of us do it with computer programs, others use board games, and then there are those who are into this national organization called the Society for the Preservation of Creative Anachronisms. Now, these people actually stage real tournaments using real armor, except they have safety-tipped lances and swords. Well, now a television producer has tapped into this national phenomenon, and he has packaged it in a new TV show called Knights and Warriors. A hot new sports fantasy show has hit the airwaves. Sci-Fi Buzz went behind the scenes to get a closer look at the magic and mayhem that prevails in the Warrior Dome.
There is no turning back. The time has come for Knights and Warriors!
Man, who thought this up? Well, actually, this was my idea. It's pure torture. It's pure television. It's the only show with a royal attitude.
What are you looking at?
This is the first show that combines fantasy and sports. Yeah, we've seen wrestling, which is pure fantasy, and we've seen American Gladiators, which is red, white, and blue. It's the closest thing to the Olympics that you can possibly come up with. What we did is we took elements of both genres, and we took the made-for-TV sports genre a quantum step further. We came up with larger-than-life comic book villains, you know, that you can love to hate. And that's great. People love bad guys, and this is the ultimate of good versus evil.
Come on, get up there with me.
Welcome to the Warrior Dome. Let the games begin. These people frighten me.
I don't know what planet these warriors are from, but they are mean, lean fighting machines. They literally reek of evil.
All right, you guys evil am I? Well, you tell me how evil I am. I mean, am I a normal person? Do I look like I do normal things? I think not.
Contestants vying for knighthood are thrust into large-scale tournaments with the nasty warriors. Medieval dueling on battle swords and running from the sorcerer's wheel were two of the games we witnessed from the sidelines, thank goodness.
Why did you want to do this?
It's a fantasy. Look at the place. I mean, the whole place is like medieval times. I'm playing a character. Look at the warriors. They're playing a character. It's a game. It's fun.
Are you living in a fantasy world?
Yes, I am. I love it.
Probably helps that she works out 5 days a week. You know, one of the things that's really fun about this show is all the wild costumes everyone gets to wear. Warrior Princess Malice even won a special prize for her kinky couture recently.
Oh, you're the woman that Mr. Blackwell says dresses so badly.
Yeah, and I'm outraged.
Give me that. I'm outraged. He marks me number 8 on the list. I should be number 1. I'm number 1 in everything I do. Number 1 or not at all. Got that, Bobby?
I got it. It's Mike.
I think Mr. Blackwell's comment was, if she's a princess, I'm a queen.
During our visit to the Warrior Dome, we asked some of the friendly warriors if they enjoyed their work.
This is our lives. This isn't work. It's a game. And to us, those cookie little knights are toys.
That lady Battle Axe seems like a pretty reasonable warrior, doesn't she?
It's going to be a lot of fun. Take it again. Shake it like this. Come on, let it be. Back off, lady. Yeah. The muscle.
Enough of this fantasy. I want to get back to reality.
Where's my check? I need my check now. Right here.
This is a nightmare. I'm out of here.
Tale as old as time.
We've got some colorful recommendations for you to check out on this week's Buzz Best Bets. First, new on home video is Walt Disney's blockbuster animated hit, Beauty and the Beast. This classic fairy tale about a beautiful young girl's encounter with a beast required almost 3.5 years and 600 animators to bring to life.
Voila! Oh, you look so
stupid.
The result is a film filled with dozens of lovable Disney creations. Characters like the hot-blooded candelabra Lumiere have managed to sashay their way into the hearts of millions the world over. And from animated fantasy, we jump to written fantasy. Back in 1989, Star Trek superstar William Shatner started something of a publishing phenomenon with the release of his book, Tech War. Tech War was soon followed by Tech Lords, and the next installment of the series, Tech Lab, will be released by Ace in January. But if you can't wait till then, stop by your local comic book store and pick up one of the Tech World comics from Marvel. Like the novels, the stories follow futuristic private eye Jake Cardigan through the high-tech world he hangs out in. And those are this week's Buzz Best Bets. Board the time capsule when we come back for a visit with Shockmeister William Castle. Susan Hyman is over here, one of our Sci-Fi Buzz producers. And now you used to work at the Travel Channel, right? And you made a connection with somebody very interesting.
There was a girl there named Terry Castle, and she wore a charm bracelet with axes and butcher knives on it, and she said her father gave it to her. I thought, what kind of father would give a daughter a charm bracelet like this? It turns out her father is William Castle.
Oh, of course.
Who is the gimmick king of all time, literally an icon in American film history.
What's her name?
Terry Castle.
Terry Castle.
And I had a terrific time putting this piece together, and Terry, this is for you.
William Castle, the master of movie horror, was also the ultimate showman. In the late 50s and early 60s, he spooked, shocked, and buzzed the behinds of millions of theatergoers, eager to have the pants scared off of them. His use of gadgetry and gimmicks to sell a film is now the stuff of Hollywood film lore. In The Tingler, for example, he rigged theater seats with buzz boxes.
You will feel some of the physical reactions, the shocking sensations experienced by the actors on the screen. I guarantee that The Tingler has more shocks per minute than my last film, The House on Haunted Hill.
I'm Vincent Price. You're invited to my party in the House on Haunted Hill.
When Castle put one of Hollywood's greatest horror stars, Vincent Price, in his movie House on Haunted Hill, the end product was one of the classic genre films of all time. But even with a surefire box office draw like Price, he still threw in Emergo, whereby a skeleton would fly over the audience and scare them half to death. One of Castle's most popular ploys was the fright break. He personally guaranteed every audience member their money back if they were too frightened to see the film's shocking climax. Of course, the money had to be redeemed at the coward's corner.
Do you think it's fair to tell the ending of a picture like this to your friend?
No.
Why not?
Well, well, for one thing, if they're going to see it, it spoils it. And for another thing, let them pay their 70 cents and see it and find out for themselves.
Thank you very much.
Though always a horror fan, Castle's obsession with scaring people moved into high gear after working as Bela Lugosi's assistant on a stage production of Dracula.
May I introduce a friend of Casper's, Mr. Penroll?
Such a surprise to find he had a friend. We're having you for dinner. Delicious.
Castle films were not without their share of familiar faces. A young Tom Poston, who later found television fame on Newhart, starred in 2 Castle films, The Dark Old House and Zotz.
Someone really needled her. Must have been murder. She always knitted so carefully.
That's British actor Robert Morley hamming it up on The Dark Old House. There's Jim Backus doing sort of a warped rendition of his Mr. Magoo character in Zotz. But Castle's biggest casting coup came when Joan Crawford agreed to star in the killer Straight Jacket.
Leave me alone!
In Straight Jacket, Crawford plays a deranged mother/axe murderess. So much more effective than those wire hangers, don't you think?
Do you believe in ghosts? I do. And you will too. When you come to this theater and see my picture, 13 Ghosts. No more dictation today.
Whether he was hawking supernatural viewers that allowed audiences to penetrate the spirit world in 13 Ghosts, or selling life insurance policies in Macabre, William Castle knew how to titillate the audience's horror taste buds better than anyone else. Susan, thanks a lot. That was great. As if William Castle hasn't contributed enough to film, he was the chief inspiration for the leading director of shock cinema in America today, John Waters. And of course, John was the director of Pink Flamingos. Remember the end of that? And Polyester. That was the film where they passed out scratch and sniff cards for smell-o-vision. Now remember, we'll see you next time when we reconnect the buzz.